بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. So this is the third session that we're having in this class, and just a recap of what we covered in the first two. In the first session, we talked about the importance of tafsir. Why is tafsir important? And in the second session, we talked about the development of tafsir. Over time, how did tafsir develop? Now, just a recap, there's three definitions we kind of talked about. The second two, I didn't really clarify the difference between them, or maybe I did, but it wasn't very clear. The first is tafsir. We all know what tafsir is. Tafsir is the process of studying the words and the phrases in the Quran in order to explain the meanings and objectives. This is what tafsir is. In order to understand what is the intent, what is the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to relate to us. So what some have written, they say clarify the literal significance, the murad al-isti'mali, the way the words are used. It's called the literal significance, or murad al-isti'mali, the way it's used of the verses of the Quran, in order to reveal the true significance, the murad al-jiddi. So you have murad al-isti'mali and murad al-jiddi. The isti'mal is the way that it's used. The jiddi is the true meaning of the, what is the true definition? What is the message that the Quran is trying to relay? So for example, Yadullah, the hand of God, that you don't just take it to its literal meaning and understand it that God has a hand. That's the murad al-isti'mali. But what is the murad al-jiddi, the true significance? That's the true meaning behind it that the mufassir, the scholar of tafsir, tries to come and bring and derive. So, and then this is based on the rules of Arabic, rhetorical, and rules of rational dialogue. Based on the rules of Arabic and rational dialogue, we use these rules to derive to this. And then we talked about method and approach. We talked about method and approach. The method, we referred to it as the methodology used to derive conclusions, to reach tafsir. For example, Quran bil Quran, that's a method. Tafsir al-Quran bil Hadith, that's a method. Ilmi method, the scientific approach, that's a method. The elusive, the mystical and the Sufi and the symbolic, esoteric, ta'wil, that's a method of analyzing the Quran. And then the intellectual method, which is, the comprehensive method, which most of the tafasirs today, like Al-Mizan and some of those that are coming out today, they're comprehensive. They use a little bit of hadith, a little bit of Quran bil Quran, a little bit of ilmi, scientific. These are methods. These are what are referred to as methods. And the sixth method is personal opinion. So there are six methods. The first is Quran bil Quran, analyzing the Quran through the Quran. Quran bil Hadith, understanding the Quran through the Hadith is the second. The third is the scientific, the ilmi, which focuses on special fields like philosophical, legal, scientific, literary, grammar. These are all using one specific topic to understand the Quran. And then you have the elusive, which is the mystical, the Sufi, the symbolic, the esoteric, the ta'wil. That is the fourth. The fifth is the intellectual method, which relies on reason and explains matters in the current day. It's understood, relying on logic and relying on reason, focusing more on reason. And the sixth is the personal opinion, tafsir bil ra'i, which is haram, and we explained about. So these are six methods of understanding the Quran. And then there's something else referred to as approach. Method is what's the methodology that you're using. What is the approach? The approach it refers to the influence of the prevailing religious and doctrinal beliefs. For example, the style of the mufassir. What was this mufassir, the scholar, his life or her life? What were they shaped by? when they were analyzing the Quran. You know, for example, was this person living in a time of war? Was this person living in a time of peace? Was this person... All of these approaches, yes, brother.
So do we have all these kind of tafasirs available in the
No, this is... we're classifying the tafasir. So we're saying tafasir could be classified in method, and tafasir could be classified in approach. And sometimes you find a mix of all of them.
But there is no such books available.
No, there is. There is.
All 6 kinds?
Yes. For example, Tafsir bil-Ra'i, there were some that they came and they gave their own opinion. That's one. The elusive, the mystical, there is. You find, for example, Ibn Arabi, Ghazali. This is the type of tafsir that they would refer to. Tafsir that are scientific, there are some, you know. Al-Jawahir we talked about. And Tafsir bil-Hadith we mentioned, and we will go deep into this later on when we focus on Tafsir bil-Hadith. There are some books that are only Tafsir bil-Hadith. For example, Nur al-Thaqalain. You know, there are several books that just focus on, they don't even talk. You know, they just say, قال الباقر, قال الصادق, قال رسول الله regarding this. This is method. And then approach, there is also different. And then we also covered this. For example, the approach based on school of thought. This is an approach. The examples, you have Shia tafsir. You know, you have the Sunni tafsir. You have the Sufi tafsir. Based on the sect that a person subscribes to, they come and they understand the Quran based on that sect. For example, Shia tafsir. When you read a Shia tafsir, you'll see it's different from the Sunni tafsir. For example, when you pass by the verse, Adam disobeyed his Lord, what do you see the Shia tafsir say? They say it's not a sin. Because if you accept that he sinned, then that means you're breaking the doctrine of the Shia belief. You're going against the Shia. They come and they try to understand it in a different way. So this is shaped, this approach towards tafsir is shaped by your own sect and your ideology. Second, approach based on doctrine, kalam. So the first is approach based on fiqh, based on jurisprudence and school of thought. Second is approach based on doctrine. You have several, theological schools of thought. We have jurisprudential schools of thought, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali, Imami, Ja'fari. These are jurisprudential schools of thought. And then you have theological schools of thought. They were existing together at the same time. The theological schools of thought, the Mu'tazila, the Asha'ira, the Imamiyya. These are belief systems, belief in God. The belief of, was the Quran created or non-created? This is something that they were fighting about for such a long time. The belief regarding predestination and free will. Muslims were arguing about this. And of course this emerged, Salaam alaikum, this emerged once philosophy began to enter into the Muslim realm, into the Muslim sphere. So about 100 years after the Prophet, the works of philosophical works began to enter into the Muslim sphere. That is when they started talking about these topics. Predestination, is the Quran created, free will, and all of these things. So this is the second approach based on doctrine. The third approach is an approach based on personal preference, individual expertise, interest in a particular discipline, literary, jurisprudential, sociological, mystical, historical, political, educational. Today, if you want to write a Quran and for example, you have a degree in sociology, you have a degree in psychology, you're going to understand the Quran through that sociological approach, through the historical approach. These are approaches towards the Quran, and they influence the tafsir of the Quran. And the fourth is approaches based on the prevailing attitudes of the time. For example, you find my understanding of the Quran when I read it, I read a verse of jihad. I'm living in a society, I say, no, I don't believe that Rasulullah was, he wanted to cause bloodshed and war. My understanding is that these are all in self-defense. These were all, this is the way I understand it. Someone else, someone Taliban, ISIS, when they read the Quran, they see, a verse that may kind of suggest some type of violence. Right away they say, yes, go and kill them, This is their approach towards the Quran. So the approach based on the prevailing attitude, this is influenced by time, this is influenced by place. This is influenced by whether you're living during a time of peace, during a time of war, unity, Muslim unity, civil harmony, there's sectarianism going on or not. All of these things, they influence the approach of the tafsir. Now, regardless of personal approach, there are certain qualifications. There's nothing wrong with having your own personal approach towards the Quran. For example, you studied medicine and you want to go towards the Quran with that. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you follow the qualifications and the conditions of a mufassir. So a mufassir, the person who does the Quranic exegesis, the person who does tafsir of the Quran, needs to have conditions. There are certain requirements in order to go and approach the Quran, in order to know how to use the methods of understanding the Quran, in order to not step out of boundary. You need to be qualified. You need to be equipped. Otherwise, you're going to fall in something that's haram. What is it? Tafsir bil-ra'i. You're going to start giving your own personal opinions, and then it becomes haram. And this is something that is haram. And of course, this is, regarding any subject that you want to go to, you need to have qualifications. A mujtahid today, when you study, you go and someone becomes a mujtahid. A mujtahid, he comes and he says, this is halal, this is haram. Another mujtahid says, this is halal, this is haram. They have different opinions. But because they have met the conditions, because they have met the qualifications of ijtihad, they are in their legal framework, it's okay for them to say this is halal and this is haram. They know when do they step out and when are they still within ijtihad. But someone who doesn't have the conditions, someone who doesn't have the qualifications, it's going to be very easy for them to fall in the trap of tafsir bil-ra'i. So in ijtihad, you need to be a mujtahid, then you go and you do ijtihad. In Quran, you need to have the qualifications in order to understand it. And similarly with any other subject. Right now you want to be a doctor, don't you need conditions? When you want to be an engineer, aren't there conditions? For any field of expertise, there are conditions and regulations. So, what are the qualifications of a successful Quranic mufassir? This is what we'll focus on today. Inshallah, if we didn't have time, we'll continue it in the next topic, in the next subject, in the next class. What are the qualifications? What makes a mufassir? So, scholars have pointed out several ingredients, several conditions, several elements, and subjects that must be fully understood in order for a person to go and understand the Quran. You can't just go into the Quran and give your own opinion because you read this verse. You'll fall in haram. So many scholars in their tafsir, when you open a book of tafsir, for example, Tafsir al-Mizan, and many books of tafsir, and we will, inshallah, later on, we will go and explain a lot of these tafasir. Which category do they fall in? In the beginning of the tafsir, they give an intro. What's their approach? What methods do they use? What's their approach? What's their goal? What they try to use? They give that to say what makes their tafsir different from another tafsir. Otherwise, why come and write another tafsir? They come and they write a tafsir because they believe their tafsir is different from another tafsir. So they come and they say what is different in their approach and their methodology. So one of them, a scholar by the name of Al-Raghib Al-Isfahani. Al-Raghib Al-Isfahani, he has a book by the name Jami' al-Tafasir. In the Muqaddama, in the intro to Jami' al-Tafasir, he has several conditions of a mufassir. What is required of a mufassir? Another scholar by the name of Az-Zarkashi, he has a book by the name of Al-Burhan fi Ulum al-Quran. He also has conditions. Another is As-Suyuti. He has a book by the name of Al-Itqan. In that he has the conditions. Now, what I have gathered today is from Ayatollah Subhani, which I mentioned. I'm going to be referring to his book. His book is called Al-Manahij al-Tafsiriyya, basically the curriculum of tafsir, in Arabic, of course. And in that, he has Al-Manahij al-Tafsiriyya fi Ulum al-Quran by Ayatollah Subhani, a contemporary scholar living today. He has pointed out 10 points, 10 conditions and qualifications to make a real mufassir, a scholar, someone who's able to truly understand the Quran. Some of them are the same as others, and some of them are a little bit different based on his understanding. The first, my dear brothers and sisters, the first condition to understand the tafsir of the Quran and to go into tafsir and delve into this topic is obviously understanding Arabic grammar. This is something very obvious, right? Everyone was going to guess that. Because the Quran is in Arabic. And Allah says in the Quran, نَزَلَ بِهِ الرُّوحِ الْأَمِينَ عَلَى قَلْبِكَ لِتَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُنذِرِينَ بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran, the Ruh al-Amin, Jibreel, he came down, he brought the Quran, عَلَى قَلْبِكَ, upon the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ, with a clear Arabic tongue, clear Arabic dialect language. And this is in Surah Al-Shu'ara 193, 195. Now, when we say Arabic grammar, what do we mean? We mean the nahu, the grammar of a sentence. You know, you understand the verb of the word. Is it is it a verb that is in order? Is it understanding the nahu, the syntax of the Quran, of the Arabic language. Second is understanding sarf, which is the morphology, how the word is derived, how the word is brought together. You know, the past tense, the present, the command. These are all things that are very important to understand. And third, al-ishtiqaq. Al-ishtiqaq is the root of the word. You know, in Arabic, the word has a root, and then it's others, verbs. In the Arabic language, things are added to it. It makes it, the whole meaning changes. So you need to know the ishtiqaq, the roots of the word. Yes?
Would you have any example for the number 4, al-ishtiqaq?
Yes, there is an example, but I have to find it. In his book, he had put several examples of how several Orientalists, they came and they tried to understand bring out the root of the word, and they came with another word.
Verb or root of the word or verb?
The root of the word. The root of the word. This is the ishtiqaq. So let me see where I could find that. So this is something that's very important. This one. He said some Orientalists, they came and they took this word, ليس على الضعفاء ولا على المرضى. مرضى. He says مأخوذ من رضي. The Orientalist, he says this is taken from the word radi, to be satisfied, whereas the radi is from marad. It's not from radi. It's not from radi. Marda is sick, but this Orientalist, he understood it as radi, to be satisfied. The meaning changes. So you read the Quran, ليس على الضعفاء ولا على المرضى. It's not wajib upon the weak and upon the sick. But here, he would understand it as the ones who are content.
Yeah, we're happy.
So,
Do you have a reference for them?
this is At-Tawbah 91. At-Tawbah 91. Yes.
Said, if you read, I don't know how to read Arabic. If I read the Quran in English, is that acceptable?
There's nothing wrong with reading it in English. However, in order to understand and to do tafsir of the Quran, you would have to read it in Arabic.
I have to learn Arabic?
Yes. So this is, of course, we're talking about someone who wants to go and derive laws and do tafsir of the Quran. If you just want to read the Quran, there's nothing wrong with reading it and reading the commentary with it.
I understand it more in English than Arabic.
That's good. That's good. Read the commentary with it. We're talking about the conditions of someone who they want to give their own opinion. They want to do the tafsir. Usually what we do is we read the opinions of scholars, what they have given, and they've clarified it for us. Yes.
Sorry, Sayyid.
Yes, sister.
This really helps me, and I don't know if it does the class too, but could we have an example for Nahu and Sarf too? That would just help.
Let me see if I could find it. I don't have the example of the Nahu and Sarf right now, but I could probably find. He has placed examples of the root word. The root word. But the Nahu and the Sarf basically is the fa'il, the maf'ul, the one whose action, the action has fallen upon this person. These are anything in the Arabic language. And Sarf as well the same. It's how the words are brought together. You could see many examples. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the Quran. But this is the root word, the ishtiqaq. This is where some people, this is where people mix up. Because you want to see what's the word, what's the root word, what is the Quran intending on telling us. Some people, they go and they reach a different word. So this is one. Second is the vocabulary, the ma'ani al-mufradat, the vocabulary. What are the words, what's the meaning of the words that are used in the Quran? Allah talks about tayammum, doing tayammum. Allah says, فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. Do tayammum, sa'idan tayyiba. What does sa'id mean? Someone who doesn't understand what sa'id means, they're not going to be able to, understand what it is. Sa'id is the soil. You do the tayammum. If you don't have water, you do tayammum on the soil. Or, وَفَاكِهَةً وَأَبَّا. What does abba mean? People don't know. Even the second Khalifa, he didn't know. They asked him, what does fakihatan wa abba? Umar ibn al-Khattab, they asked him, what does fakihatan wa abba? He says, fakih, I know, fakih is fruit. Abba, I don't know what it is. So they went and they asked Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, abba is the food for the animals. Because the following verse, it says, mata'an lakum wa li'an'amikum. Food for you and for your animals. So, fakihatan wa abba. So, if someone doesn't have the the vocabulary, doesn't understand the vocabulary, it's going to be very difficult for this person. Al-Raghib al-Isfahani, that same scholar that we mentioned his name, he has a book, Al-Mufradat. Basically, he has taken the words that are used in the Quran and he has he's done a vocabulary of the words in the Quran. So this is defining the Quranic vocabulary, and this is very important because the Quran, although someone might understand the word, but sometimes the Quran uses analogies and metaphors. So you can't always take the word, to its just, meaning right off the bat. You take it. You need to sometimes go and understand what is the message that the Quran is trying to relay. So these are, understanding the grammar by itself is not enough. This plus the vocabulary, and these are, these are some things that will help you understand the Quran. For example, I'll give you an example of this one. وَعَصَى آدَمُ رَبَّهُ فَغَوَى. Allah talks about Adam. Allah says Adam, asa. He did usyan to his Lord. فَغَوَى. Then he was misled. Now, some people, when they read this, they say, this is obvious. How could the Quran be any more clear? That Adam is not a ma'soom. Adam disobeyed his Lord. وَعَصَى. Allah says in the Quran, وَعَصَى آدَمُ رَبَّهُ فَغَوَى. Asa and ghawa. Asa, they understood it to mean deliberate disobedience. And ghawa means he was astray. Someone who's astray, who's gone astray from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, Ibn al-Mandur, a scholar of Arabic vocabulary, he comes and he says that asa does not mean deliberate disobedience. Asa, it's more general than deliberate disobedience. It means not following the rules, but doesn't mean breaking your rule and deliberately disobeying you. Now, when you understand that differently, when you understand it as more general than deliberate disobedience, you're going to have a different impression. You're going to have a different perspective. So he says it's very important to understand the vocabulary, the real vocabulary, because that will change the meaning. Someone who doesn't, the doctor tells you don't smoke and you go and you smoke. Are you a person who's, sinning or disobeying? No, you just didn't follow the rules the way that you were supposed to. It doesn't mean you're breaking the law. So here, asa, it means someone who didn't follow the rules. It doesn't mean he disobeyed God. There's a difference between the two. Do you guys understand, what I'm trying to say? Okay. And ghawa is also from al-ghay, which is a word that is more general than gone astray. Today when we say ghawa, we mean someone who has gone astray from the path of God. But al-ghay, it means someone who, has been let down or missed out. Not someone who's disobeying Allah and is, intentionally going against the orders of Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is the second point, understanding the vocabulary. The third is, we're just going to mention it. I'm not going to explain it a lot because it takes a lot of time, and we're going to dedicate time for this, is Tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran. So Subhani says, in order to understand the Quran, you need to have grammar, you need to have the vocabulary, you need to be able to understand the Quran through the Quran. The fourth point is important, and this is referred to as al-hifaz ala siyaq al-ayat. What does this mean? This means the verses need to be grouped together. I can't just come and, take a book, any book. I come and I take out one sentence and I say I understand what the sentence is trying to say. What I need to do is read the chapter or read, the paragraph to understand what the overall message is. If I just take out one sentence, I'm not going to understand it. Someone says, yes, I want to do tafsir of the Quran, I'm just going to read this verse and I'm going to do tafsir of it. You can't do that. He says you need to group the verses together because there's an overall meaning. If you take one individual meaning, it's perhaps going to bring a very different understanding of the Quran. And he gives an example. An example in Surah Al-A'raf. In Surah Al-A'raf, chapter 7, verse 26, 27, up to about 35. These verses in Surah Al-A'raf, what they are doing is they are talking to the children of Adam when they first, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us the dialogue that Allah used to the children of Adam when Adam first came down to earth. Okay? So, for example, in 7:26, Allah says, Ya bani Adam, قد أنزلنا عليكم لباسا يواري سوآتكم وريشا ولباس التقوى ذلك خير. O children of Adam, we have bestowed upon you clothing to conceal your private parts and as adornments, but the clothing of the righteous. Talking about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave clothes to Adam. Second, Ya bani Adam, لا يفتننكم الشيطان كما أخرج أبويكم من الجنة. O children of Adam, let not Satan tempt you as he removed your parents from paradise, stripping them of their clothes to show them their private part. And then the verses continue. And then one verse, it goes and it says, Ya bani Adam, imma ya'tiyannakum. And this is 7:35. This is Surah Al-A'raf, verse 35. Ya bani Adam, imma ya'tiyannakum rusulun minkum yaqussuna alaykum ayati. O children of Adam, if there come to you messengers from among you relating to you my verses, then whoever fears Allah and reforms, there will be no fear concerning them, nor will they grieve. Now, these verses need to be understood together. If they're not understood together, if today you go and you read this verse, O children of Adam, if there come to you messengers from among you relating to you my verses, then whoever fears Allah and reforms, there will be no fear concerning them, nor will they grieve. What will you understand from this if you read it by itself?
There are more messengers.
Yes. If you read this by itself, you're going to deny the khatamiyya of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You're going to deny that Rasulullah is the final messenger. Because the Quran came after Rasulullah. This verse came, O children of Adam, if there come to you messengers from among you relating to you my verses, then whoever fears and reforms. Some people have used this, some people who do tafsir bil-ra'i, based on opinion, they come and they take out this verse and they say Rasulullah is not the final messenger. There are other messengers that will come, because the verse clearly says, O children of Adam, if messengers come to you. However, this, you will fall in this if the verses are separated. But if you bring them together and place them in the batch of the verses, you group them together in the verses that were speaking to the children of Adam when they first came down onto earth, then you're going to understand that this verse and these other verses, they were a dialogue to those before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is that clear? Okay. Yes, brother Ali, you had a question?
Yeah, there's a verse that's pretty much the same exact thing in Surah Al-Baqarah. It's verse 38, and it's a lot harder to do Tafsir Ra'i with that interpretation, because it has قُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُمْ مِنِّي هُدًى فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. So it's basically the same thing what Surah Al-A'raf is saying.
Yes.
But it's much more clear that it's said
at that time,
as they're getting out from the garden.
Yes. So basically, the whole point is that you need to understand the verses by grouping them together. Sometimes. However, sometimes the verses are not grouped together. Sometimes you find in the middle of 5, 6 verses, there's something in the middle that is completely different. And this is the miraculous element of the Quran. This is what made the Quran a miracle. This is what made no one was able to come and do something like the Quran. In the middle of a topic, suddenly there's another idea is brought forth. And this is exactly what I'm going to go to. This is what some scholars of the Quran have referred to as their ring structures in the Quran. Ring structures. Meaning the verse starts, it's talking about a topic, and then it goes to another topic, and then it goes to another topic, and then in the middle of the verse, there's the major theme of the verse, and then it starts going back to the other topics. I don't use the board a lot, so I think I have the right to use the board, right? So here there's the verse begins here. For example, it's praising God. Praise. And then second, it's talking about Judgment Day. And then another one, it begins talking about some of the rules or the prophets, and then it starts ending in that. And then once it's ending, it goes back to these same topics once again. It goes back to these same topics. So this is what they refer to as ring structures of the Quran. So sometimes you might find some verses, they're in the same topic, suddenly the topic shifts, but then it goes back to that same topic once again. So here there are several examples of this. There are several examples of this. So sometimes you need to group the verses together in order to understand them, and sometimes no. For example, in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 222 all the way up to 240. If you write this down so you look at this, all the way up to 240, the verses are all talking about the rules regarding women. Divorce, the menstrual cycle, talks about these basically topics regarding women, suckling the children, all these things. So for example, that's the whole theme. And then suddenly, in the middle of that, verse 237 and 238, what do they talk about? They talk about salah, prayer. And then it goes back to talking about women once again. They're not related, but then suddenly there is this, in the middle of several verses, there's this verse that the topic changes. So for example, in 222, Surah Al-Baqarah, and they ask you about the menstruation, say it is harm, so keep away from the wives during menstruation. All the way, and then 228, divorced women remain in waiting period for 3 periods, and it is not lawful for them to conceal what Allah has created in their wombs. 233, mothers may breastfeed their children 2 complete years for whoever wishes to complete the nursing. 237, and if you divorce them before you have touched them and you have already specified for them an obligation, then give half of what you specified. And then suddenly, 238, maintain with care the obligatory prayers, and in particular the middle prayer, and stand before Allah devoutly obedient. حافظوا على الصلاة والصلاة الوسطى. And then the next verse, and if you fear an enemy, then pray on foot or riding. But when you are secure, then remember Allah as He has taught you that which you did not previously know. And suddenly, shift. I'll explain to you. Suddenly, then 240, and those who are taken in death among you and leave wives behind. And then it continues talking about the inheritance of the wives. You asked, why does it do that? Now, in the last class, the Quranic sciences that we taught, we talked about the miraculous elements of the Quran. The Quran is not like my word or your word. When we talk, we typically we finish one subject and then we start another subject. And then we start another, we move on. One of the miraculous elements of the Quran is that it doesn't follow the way that we go by. And this is what makes the Quran inimitable. You can't come and imitate the Quran. I'jaz. You can't no one could come and, bring something like the Quran. And then the Quran was being revealed over time. So for example, these verses were being revealed, and say, for example, it was revealed and the Muslims were traveling. And then the Muslims, I didn't read the tafsir, but I'm just giving you an example. Say for example, it came a time of war. So what? The Quran comes and it says, maintain with care the obligatory prayers, in particular the middle prayer, and stand before Allah devoutly obedient. And if you fear an enemy, then pray on foot or riding. So it shows that, I'm talking to you right now, and then someone comes, I give them a message, and then I go back and I talk to you. This is how the Quran was being revealed. So sometimes there was a message within a message. And this is, one of the miraculous elements of the Quran. Scholars say that this is something that is a feature of i'jaz, inimitability within the Quran. This is one example. Another example, and we'll conclude with this. And this is because it's very relevant. So we'll finish at the fourth one, is the verse of tathir, the verse of purification. The verse purifies the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And this verse in Surah Al-Ahzab, chapter 33, verse 33. 33 is the verse of purification. The verse that purifies the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. But then when you go and you read Surah Al-Ahzab, you come and you see in the beginning, the tone and the rhetoric of the Quran is very harsh, and it's speaking only to the wives of the Prophet. So the verses begin, يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك إن كنتن تردن الحياة الدنيا وزينتها فتعالين أمتعكن وأسرحكن سراحا جميلا. O Prophet, O Prophet, tell your wives, if you want this life, if you want the hayat ad-dunya and the enjoying just having this life, come, I'll give you the divorce, and you go and do whatever you want to do. This is a threatening rhetoric to the wives of the Prophet. And if you want Allah and His Prophet and the afterlife, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised the muhsinat, those good from you, minkum, min kunna ajran azima. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised those who do good from amongst you, ajran azima. And then, يا نساء النبي من يأتي منكن بفاحشة مبينة يضاعف لها العذاب ضعفين وكان ذلك على الله يسيرا. O wives of the Prophet, if any of you do a fahisha, excuse me? Openly indecent, act. Someone does something haram out in the open, then the adhab, the punishment is going to be much severe upon you because you are closer to the Prophet. You are the wives of the Prophet. And then the verse continues, يا نساء النبي لستن كأحد من النساء إن اتقين فلا تخضعن بالقول فيطمع الذي في قلبه مرض وقلن قولا معروفا. Be careful when you speak, be careful what you talk. وقرن في بيوتكن, and stay in your homes. ولا تبرجن تبرج الجاهلية الأولى وأقمنا الصلاة وآتينا الزكاة وأطعنا الله ورسوله. And then, suddenly, in the middle of a verse, it doesn't even start another verse, what happens? إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah purifies the Ahlul Bayt and removes all filth and removes all rich from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And then the verse continues and it goes, وَاذْكُرْنَ مَا يُتْلَى فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ مِنْ آيَاتِ اللَّهِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ لَطِيفًا خَبِيرًا. Now, here, there's a very important discussion that takes place within the Muslims. Some Muslims, they come and they say this verse of tathir, the verse of purification, this is not only Rasulullah and Fatima al-Zahra, Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein, and the Ahlul Bayt, the Ahlul Bayt that we know, the five. This is also including the wives of the Prophet. But from the Quran, you could explain that, you could understand that this does not include the wives of the Prophet. The first point is the grammar, the speech and the rhetoric changes. Listen to this. إن كنتن تردن الحياة الدنيا وإن كنتن, the inna at the end, this is referring to dialogue to women, only women. I don't know if you noticed when I was reading, it always ends with unna, to the wives of the Prophet. يا نساء النبي لستن كأحد من النساء إن اتقينا فلا تخضعن بالقول. وقرن في بيوتكن ولا تبرجن. And then suddenly, what happens? إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم, not عنكن, عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. Here, someone who knows the Arabic grammar will know that this kum is not the wives of the Prophet, because now the language changed. And this kum includes men and women in a bigger group, while the other one is only to the wives of the Prophet. This is one point. Second is that the first verses were harsh rhetoric towards the wives of the Prophet. How could the Quran contradict itself within the same paragraph, within the same surah, right by each other? First it's threatening, and then Allah purifies you, Allah loves you, Allah this and that. Does that make sense? No. Yes, brother.
So would it be correct to say then that starting from verse 29/30, that would be its own paragraph, then إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ, that should be separated as its own separate thought, and then a new paragraph?
That is how it's understood today by the Shia scholars.
So it shouldn't all be,
Even though it's in the middle of the surah. So what I was trying to say in the beginning is you have to always bring the verses together, group them together, but that is not always the case. That is not always the case.
they shouldn't be kept all as one.
Sometimes they should be, sometimes they shouldn't. It's up to the mufassir to understand the Quran and their approach towards the Quran. Yes. But it's always good to look at the bigger picture. Even in this one, when you look at the bigger picture, you're going to understand who the Ahlul Bayt are. Because when you see all the threats, in kunna, tunna, all these, stay in your home, don't do this, don't do that, the punishment of Allah, or Rasulullah could divorce you, all of these, and then suddenly Allah purifies you, Ahlul Bayt, wa yutahhirakum tathira. Once you bring these together, you're going to understand the differences. Yes?
I think Allah does basically the same thing when He says وَأَغْرَقْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ, but obviously in that Al Fir'aun is not the wife, Imra'at Fir'aun.
Yes. There's a rule, مَا مِنْ عَامٍ إِلَّا وَقَدْ خُصٍّ. Any general theory, general idea, always there are exceptions. There are always exceptions in these generalities. So the verse of the Ahlul Bayt, this verse of Tathir, this is referring to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Rasulullah, Imam Ali, Fatima al-Zahra, Imam al-Hasan, and Imam al-Hussein. Although they were all in the house of the Prophet, but the Ahlul Bayt, according to Sunni and Shia scholars, it is them. No Muslim scholar from the Sunnis, no one says the Ahlul Bayt they could not be Imam Ali or Fatima al-Zahra, Imam al-Hasan or Imam al-Hussein. The question is regarding the wives of the Prophet. So the Imam Ali, Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein, Fatima al-Zahra, all Muslim scholars, they say they are included in Ahlul Bayt. The question is Aisha, is Hafsa, is Salama, are these people included in this group or not? When you read this verse, you will understand that they are not included. When you read the grouping of the verses, you will understand that they were not included. This is a good place to stop. Inshallah, in the next discussion that we have, the next session that we have, we will continue with more of the conditions of the mufassir. More conditions of the mufassir. So we'll go again with what we covered. The first is Arabic grammar. Second is vocabulary. Third is tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran. Fourth is al-hifadh ala siyaq al-ayat, keeping the verses together, grouping them together. And inshallah, we will cover the fifth later on, which is going back to hadith. That's one, the fifth. The sixth is ma'rifat asbab al-nuzul, knowing the occasions of revelation. Seventh is al-ihata bi-tarikh sadr al-Islam, knowing the history of Islam and during the time of the Prophet. Eighth is differentiating between Meccan and Medinan verses. Ninth is understanding the different views of different scholars and Sahaba about the verses of the Quran. And 10th is refraining from tafsir bil-ra'i. We will cover those in the next session. Inshallah, we'll explain them, in detail. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi at-tahirin. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.